Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Victoria and today we're going to be doing a video that I actually saw on Tori from Novel Life's channel. She did a collab with Cheyenne from That Tall Book Girl, and they did a one trope, one book recommendation video that I loved watching. I loved watching both of their videos. I will link both of them down below in the description box, but I loved this idea. They basically talked about 6 different tropes and then gave one book recommendation for each trope, and I chose 6 tropes. I didn't do exactly the same tropes that they did, but I chose 6 different tropes, and I'm going to recommend one book for each trope. So I give full credit to Tori and Cheyenne for this video, but I loved the idea, so I hope they don't mind that I'm gonna do my own version. Some of these tropes that I chose are ones that I have other full recommendation videos for. So if I do, I will link those full videos down below and I'll let you know which tropes those are. But the books that are in this video are not going to be the same as the ones that are in those recommendation videos. I wanted to make sure that I'm talking about different books. Without further ado, let's get into the video and the first trope, which is workplace romance. I love a good workplace romance. The book that I chose for this trope is See Me After Class by Megan Quinn. This is a book that I read recently that became one of my top favorite Megan Quinn books. I loved this book. It is about 2 teachers, so it takes place in a school setting. They teach high school and they both are English teachers. The heroine, Greer, is new to the school. The book starts when she is getting interviewed to get hired, and one of the people who is doing the hiring, or who is in her interview, doesn't like her, and it's very obvious that he doesn't like her. They have very, very different teaching styles and very different opinions on how students should be taught, and so they automatically already don't get along, but she does end up getting hired. The principal stands up in her defense and does hire her, and she finds out that the guy who is in her interview who didn't like her is actually the head of the English department, which she is now going to be teaching in. So, and that his name is Arlo Turner. And they have sort of a enemies to lovers type romance where they don't get along at all because their personalities, their teaching styles are entirely different. Arlo has a very traditional view on things. He's very lectures in front of the class. He likes his class to be silent. He is very structured. He puts a lot of pressure on the students. He has a lot of expectations for them. He is not there to be their friend. He's there to teach them and prepare them for college. Whereas Greer loves visual media. She likes to act out the books that they're reading. She likes to add in alternate books. She plays the movies while they're reading the books so that the kids can have a visual representation while also reading the original written book. She just has a much more different, less traditional view of teaching, and Arlo doesn't like that, especially because their rooms are right next door to each other, and Greer, when she teaches in her classroom, makes a lot of noise, and Arlo likes his room to be silent, and Greer basically just bursts into his life, into his work, and shakes everything up. And it is such an interesting story. I love the enemies to lovers aspect that they do from this. They have some of the best tension in the beginning. Greer takes it upon herself to play some pranks on Arlo to try and get him to loosen up a little bit, or just get back at him for being such an asshole. But it's very, very fun. I loved the Pride and Prejudice element of this book also. Greer is a huge Pride and Prejudice fan. it's a big aspect because it's one of the books that they're teaching in school, because they're both English teachers and they both love classic literature. And Pride and Prejudice is one of my favorite books ever. I absolutely adore the story of Pride and Prejudice. It means a lot to me. And so I loved that they added in those little elements of things that you would notice if you've, or notice and understand if you've read Pride and Prejudice. The second trope that I'm going to be talking about is age gap. This is one of the ones that I do have a full recommendation video for, so like I said, it'll be linked down in the description box. But age gap is one of my favorite tropes ever. The book that I am going to be recommending for this is Waking Olivia by Elizabeth O'Rourke. This is a romance between a college track heroine and her track coach. So they have quite an age gap. I think it's significant. It's at like 10 years-ish. And she is a college student. She has transferred to this college. She originally was a track star, but has kind of she has recently lost her scholarship at her D1 school for a fighting issue, and she has transferred now to this D3 school, and they have a lot of hopes for her to revamp their track program because she was a elite track runner. But her coach, whose name is Will, I think, he doesn't have as many good thoughts about her in the beginning. He very much thinks that she's just like a spoiled kid. But he learns a lot more about her. She gets on his nerves a lot because he's so attracted to her, and it bothers him because she's so off limits, because she's so much younger, because she's his athlete that he's working with. And he ends up discovering a lot of her trauma that she has and realizing how much trauma that she has. Olivia has this condition which causes her to run while she's sleeping, and I mean run like somebody is chasing her and she's running for her life. And so Will has to help her through that and help her work through it. It was a very, very interesting book. It's much on the darker side because Olivia does have some severe trauma in her past that she has to overcome, but it is so good and I 100% loved it. Next trope that I'm going to recommend is Touch Her and Die, and this is another one that I have a full recommendation video for, so again, down below. But the book that I'm going to recommend for this one is another one that I read recently, and that is Praise by Sarah Kate. This is a ex-boyfriend's dad romance, and it is a BDSM type dynamic in it. The heroine has recently broken up with her boyfriend, and she goes to see him to try and get the security deposit back from him for the apartment that they lived in together, but he tells her that his dad has it, and so she goes to his dad's office to get her security deposit back. And the father, the hero in the story, mistakes her for his one of his submissive secretaries. And he tells her to kneel for him and to crawl to him and all these like very submissive acts. And she is intrigued by it. And he ends up finding out who she is, and he offers her a job as a regular secretary at his office. And he ends up training her as his submissive. The hero in this is very possessive of her. He is very, even though he's not supposed to be, for a lot of the book, he's like, we're not together. We're like, she's just my secretary. I can't touch her. And then when they do end up crossing all these lines, he still is like, and they still are like, no, we're not together. But even though he says they're not together, he is incredibly possessive of her. And so he owns a sex club, and so when they go there for an opening, for the opening of the sex club and for events there, she is hit on by other people or looked at by other people, and he is not having it, and he's like, absolutely fucking not, do not touch her. And it gave me those vibes of like such a possessive toucher and I'll kill you heroes, and I loved it. The next trope is friends to lovers, and for this one I am going to recommend Goodbye Paradise by Serena Bowen. This one is a MM romance about two best friends who escape from a cult. The one of the heroes has had a crush on his friend for a very long time, but doesn't think the other one likes him, and also they live in this cult and they are not allowed to be gay. But there's an excess of men in the cult, and so he knows that he doesn't have enough to offer them and he's gonna get thrown out, but that his best friend has a higher position than him and is probably going to stay. But the best friend works out this plan where they end up escaping and running away together, and they go to a safe place and stay with people, but they are best friends, and they one of the friends, the one that always had a crush on them, realizes or learns that his best friend also has a crush on him, and it's this very, very cute friends to lovers story where they really rely a lot on each other because they're the only two that really like know what they went through, and it's very, very cute as they settle into their new life and their new dynamic as more than friends. But it's very cute and I really, really enjoyed it. Next trope is second chance. I don't love most second chance romances, so when I find one that I do love, it's very exciting for me. But one of my all-time favorite second chance romances is Riffs and Refrains by Devney Perry. This one is about a musician who, she is a drummer. She is a very famous drummer in a band, and she had left her small town to pursue her music dreams quite a long time ago, and she left on very bad terms with her family. But she finds out that her grandmother has died, and her grandmother was the only person in her family who she actually like still talked to and who she knew still cared about her. And so she decides to go back to her small town for the funeral for her grandmother. And while she's there, she sees her high school childhood boyfriend, childhood love, and they have to very much work through all of their baggage and damage from her leaving and from all the time apart that they have spent together, and also she has to work through all of her damage with her parents and her family and all of the emotional trauma that has put her through, that has changed her, and she has this like weight lifted off her shoulders as she ends up working through it with her family, and it's really, really sweet. I really loved it. I read it at a very perfect point in my life when my grandmother had just died, so it was very emotional for me to read it, but I really loved it. Also, it is a single dad romance because her childhood boyfriend, her high school boyfriend, is a widower. So he has a son, so it's very cute and I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite second chance romances. The last trope that I'm going to recommend for this video is forced proximity or stuck together. And the book that I chose for this one is Unraveling Him by Claire Kingsley. This is book 3 in the Bailey Brothers series, but you can absolutely read it as a standalone. It is about Evan Bailey, who is a mechanic in this small town. He has 4 brothers who he's very close to, but has kind of distanced himself in the past couple of years from them. He doesn't live in town with them. Like, he lives on the outskirts of town while they all live on the same street. He tends to not like go out drinking and stuff with them. He tends to like keep to himself. He's become a little reclusive over the last couple of years. And the heroine, who is the sunshiny, very sunshiny, it is a grumpy sunshine. So the heroine, who is this very sunshiny, happy character, she has recently decided to leave her father and her best friend after she has a bad situation with them, and she is very much drawn to Evan the hero. And so even though she's only met him one time, she goes to him for kind of like refuge, and she offers him this deal where if he allows her to fix her car in his shop, then she will help him access something that he really wants, that he really needs, that she has access to. And the stuck together or forced proximity of this comes in when they, in order to get this thing that Evan really needs, which is a classic car, a very rare classic car, she and him go on a road trip across country in order to go pick up this car or go get this car. And throughout this road trip of them, with them being stuck together in the car, they grow a lot closer. And I really think that the fact that they were stuck together really had Evan had a lot to do with the growth of their romance, because of the pushing through of Evan's walls. Like, he had nowhere to run. He couldn't like hide away. He couldn't escape. Basically, he had to talk to her. He had to be there in her presence and allow her to break through his walls. And you can see as you read it the softening of his grumpy exterior, and it's so cute, and I really, really loved it. It also leads to a only one bed situation when they are in a hotel, so love that for us. But it is so, so good. I absolutely loved it and would 100% recommend it. So that is it. Those are the 6 tropes that I was going to recommend for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you again to Tori and Cheyenne for this idea. Please let me know down in the comments below if you have another trope that you want a recommendation for, or if you have a recommendation for me. But that's going to be it, so please subscribe so you can see more content from me, and I hope you have a great day. Bye!